Welcome to Desert Island Tims and the day Celtic won the league again. My castaway this week is an author and blogger whose writing is a mixture of life experience and that of being a Celtic supporter. His knowledge of all things Celtic is second to none. His latest book, The Last Pearl Diver, has just recently been released. Paul Larkin, it's good to have you here. How are you?
I'm very well, Billy. It's probably the first holiday I've had in a while, being on this desert island, so I'm delighted you invited me, you know.
Well, it's really great to have you here, Paul. I'm really glad you actually turned up, considering we've just won the league. You've been wanting to go away and celebrate, so I'm really honoured you're here.
Well, I mean, we win leagues every year, so you take it or leave it nowadays.
So, I know you touch a little on your past in your books, but could you tell us a bit more about what life was like for the young Paul Larkin growing up?
Well, I was kind of born and bred in an area called Muirhouse in Edinburgh, which at the time, although you're not really aware of it as a youngster, it was called the AIDS capital of Europe. And, you know, it was kind of like, you know, you're growing up in a scheme, and it was like nobody really had ever had any money, but there was a great kind of sense of community spirit, you know, because I was born in 1974, so it was kind of the early 80s when I started to grow up. You know, I know like people kind of talk about all the poverty and all that kind of stuff, but it was great, you know. It was like, all your mates were around you and stuff, and you were kind of always out playing football, and, you know, especially with the late nights in the summer and all that kind of thing. And there was supporters, obviously, in Edinburgh. There was supporters of all different teams, you know, even Rangers had a couple then. It was great, you know. I was actually born with a disease called Perthes disease, which meant my right hip's not as strong as my left hip, which kind of led to me wearing a caliper and a kind of big shoe to kind of get my right leg to grow and stuff. So that was pretty much the first kind of 6 years of my life I had to put up with that. I was kind of in and out of hospital and stuff like that. And so you kind of, you know, it led to sort of bits of bullying and, you know, the kind of things kids say, but then it also led to the kind of adults around me protecting me and helping me and stuff like that. And I had a big shoe to kick people with, you know, so it was good. And I can actually remember the day that I actually was released, because I was in the caliper for pretty much the first 6 years of my life, and then I wasn't allowed to like play sports or football till about primary 5, because I had to let the leg grow. But I remember the first time I actually got released for a caliper, and it was like walking on air, you know, considering you had this big thing. So growing up, it was a pretty happy childhood that I had, definitely. I'd love to be able to say, I'd done this and that and everything, but in reality it was playing football and watching football. That was my life, you know. When
did you start getting into writing?
Well, what happened was, in 1999 I was working for somewhere called the Pilton Partnership. Me and my mate of mine were kind of going round those canvassing people on questions that were regarding the area and the improvements to the area, what they liked, what they didn't like, and all that kind of thing. Through that, there was a community newspaper starting and or sort of developing more. And a guy had said to me, you know, would you be interested in doing a kind of apprenticeship in journalism? And I'd never, you know, and I was like, fine, you know, because it wasn't, I was like overloaded with work offers at the time. So I was like, right, okay. So that started in December 99, and it was great, you know. I learnt so much, and I was working with a guy who was kind of my mentor called Dave Pickering, who had worked for the Edinburgh Evening News, and he taught me a hell of a lot of stuff. And then what happened was, it was May 2000, we went to see Celtic play Liverpool, and Ronnie Moran's testimonial, we got beat 4-1, and I had such a great day that day with my mates, and that it was kind of like, you know, at that time you knew something was going to change at Celtic. We'd been crap for a couple of years and stuff, and, you know, it's like, stuff it, let's just go down and have a good time. And I wrote that story about our day that day, because we had a great laugh and stuff just in my work when I went back, and I sent it to them, and they came back and said, that was brilliant, and laughed and stuff. And I thought, you know, I wrote something, they read it, they liked it, I kind of like that, you know. But then they were kind of like, the thought was, did they like that just because they were there? What happened after that then was that about 6 months later, Morton Vikos got struck down with the disease called the Guillain-Barre syndrome. I was sitting in the house one night, and there was a video that Celtic had kind of put together of the way that kind of Morton was suffering at the time, which had been, you know, we all knew that he had it, but we had never actually seen the effects of it. And I watched this video, I was like, this is awful, you know. He could hardly walk, and his legs were just so skinny and stuff. And that's when I thought, well, I've been writing these sort of kind of stories, maybe I could write a book, and, you know, that could maybe help give money to, you know, Guillain-Barre syndrome, because no, at that time I could do anything to get the exposure or anything like that. But so I wrote that book, and that became The Football Club, which came out in September 2002, and that was, you know, it raised over £1,000 for the Guillain-Barre syndrome, but it was probably my writing at its worst, because I never really knew anything about writing, and I never knew anything about promoting writing, and to the point where I had people sending in cheques for the book, and I'd never even heard of PayPal or anything until somebody, months and months after it, said, you should have set up a PayPal address for this. Aye, thanks. I could have given me that advice 6 months ago. And then I kind of continued writing from that, started to get asked to write in things like Not the View and The Alternative View, and I'd known Matt McGlone and stuff, and I'd wrote some stuff in the Celtic programme and the Celtic View, because what had happened was he told me he'd been given 6 pages to do stuff in the Celtic View, and would I like to do some stuff, and it was it was an incredible thing. I mean, I could never talk that down in the slightest to see. It was actually in a Celtic View Rangers programme. Right. In March 2000, where I wrote this article, it basically said that I didn't feel that we were as far behind Rangers as maybe the media thought we were. And I got tons of abuse for that, even for Celtic supporters, on the basis that they were sort of saying, how can you say that? Because this was just after we'd lost to Inverness Cali and things like that. Anyway, 4 months later we put 6 goals in their net, so I felt quite vindicated about that. And then after that I was doing stuff with Not the View and More Than 90 Minutes and things like that, and I dabbled in my own fanzine for a wee bit and stuff. But by about 2005 I was kind of getting a wee bit falling out of love with it, I guess, because I think that was when the internet was starting and people could react instantly to what you were writing and stuff. At that point in my life I was going through the breakdown of my first major relationship with the mother of my first son, so I wasn't really a nice guy to be around. I was far too kind of aggressive and always opinionated, and a bit like a kind of Edinburgh Citizen Smith, just pointing and shouting and all that kind of thing, and if it was either my way or a highway type thing, and it was if you didn't agree with me you were against me and stuff like that. So brought a lot of that stuff on myself, and just thought one day I've had enough of this, and I just stopped writing then, and so that was me for a few years after that,
Right, I'm going to take you to your first song now. What would that be, and why did you pick it?
Well, this was the first song that I actually ever bought. And I wasn't an avid music buyer at the time or anything like that, or I got a huge lover of music because, as I said, Celtic was my thing. And at that time, when they're talking about the early 80s, this is when ska was becoming really big, and people started walking about my area in Trilby's and Harrington Jacobs with the tartan, the Fred Perrys and the skin tight jeans and stuff. And I was like 7, 8 year old, like looking around and saying, what is going on here, like, you know what I mean? And there was a guy who stayed along the balcony for me called Drew. I asked him, because he was dressed in this kind of gear, and he said, it's all about ska, man, and all these bands and stuff. And he was like, you need to get this record, it's fantastic. And he's like, it's written about this area. And I was like, alright. So my ma went Saturday shopping, I went to the football that day, and I told her to get me this record. I'd got a record player for my 8th birthday, played it, and was just absolutely encapsulated with it, because as you'll hear in the record, it's kind of slow to begin with and it's kind of depressing, and then in the mid-state there's a wee bit of euphoria in it, and it gives you that wee bit of hope. And at that time, of course, in the early 80s, we were starting to be in the grip of Thatcherism, so every time I hear this record, it inspires me, because like Thatcherism then, we thought we were never going to get out of it, we did, and I just thought that they captured the mood of the country perfectly.
That was Ghost Town by The Specials. What's your earliest memories of going to see Celtic?
I think most of the early memories are of excitement. I can still remember, I've dabbled in a few substances in my time and a few more women, and I've never felt an excitement that you used to get when you walked up to that park, home or away. You seen the floodlights and you seen the ground, you were going on the bus and stuff like that, and I just remember the whole thing being just a phenomenal experience, you know what I mean? Because I sort of started going, I went to my first game in 1978 and started going regularly for about 1980, and at that time Celtic were pretty unstoppable, Mm-hmm. And we're laced with great players like Charlie Nicholas and Roy Aitken and Tommy Burns and Murd McLeod and all that kind of thing, who just seem to get the job done week in, week out. But my hero growing up was Danny McGrain, and that a lot came for that. Beat Danny playing fullback and me kind of standing in the front as a young boy. He was the guy you always saw, the number 2 shots going up and doing the kind of touchline and stuff. And I'd also been given, when I was about 2 year old, a framed photo of Danny that I've still got to this day. It's kind of like, I've always thought that if Celtic ever needed to send a representative to the moon, Danny McGrain would be it, because he just, 20 years, he just sheer commitment into the club and all that kind of thing. And I remember the day Danny left Celtic, and we played Hearts at Tynecastle in 87, and it was obviously the first time the Huns had won the league in 9 years, and the Celtic fans that day at Tynecastle stood for half an hour after the game chanting for Danny to come out, because here was a real legend of the club. And subsequently, since I'd met him a few times and stuff, just what a guy, one of these guys who just, appreciates what he had and appreciates the sport and all that kind of thing. So he was a huge memory. And then one of my first big memories was I was at the 1980 Scottish Cup final, which ended up with 1 or 2 arrests at the end of the game. And we never actually saw any of it because I was only 6-year-old at the time. So my father and uncle had kind of got me towards the back, towards the end of extra time, so we could get a quick exit because they knew the thing. But my abiding memory of that isn't the fighting or anything, because I never really seen it. It's actually when Celtic scored. If you remember, at that time Hampden didn't have terraces; it was like dust. And when Celtic scored, the dust just waved around everybody. That was in an era when if you'd won the Scottish Cup in that time, that saved your season. And was like, that was the thing that was going to propel you to hopefully win the league the next year. I just remember it being boiling hot day, and if you actually watch the game back, it's a terrible game, but I never felt like that at the time. And just my abiding memory that day is going through, and we were in a hatchback car with my uncle, my old man guy Archie, and this guy Jake Wilkie, who had the nickname the Mad Axeman. And me and my buddy Mark, who was Archie's grandson, were sitting in the kind of boot of this hatchback, as the bairns there, and we're stuck in the traffic on the M8 where the old Cutty Sark Bridge used to be, where Coatbridge retail park is now and stuff. And a Hun bus pulls up beside us and starts giving us all the abuse and stuff like that. And Jake just pulls out the axe and starts attacking the bus. And I used to think this was how Mace supporters behaved until I got a wee bit older and realised it's not really how anybody behaves. It was these kind of characters were huge influences in my life. Not so much Jake, but my uncle, my old man, and their mate Archie and stuff. I mean, Archie Wright is a guy, I'll never forget, we were at a game at Easter Road in 1987, April, and we won 4-1 that day. And it was Archie's 65th birthday, and it was pouring the rain. It was a horrible day, but we'd won. And we come out, and Archie says, I'm going to start slowing down this football, because I'm 65, I'm retired now. And I said, well, obviously that's understandable. He was at Dingwall 3 weeks ago in his 90s, and he's still going home and away.
Brilliant.
So I think I'll do a hell of a lot to catch up with him, that kind of level of commitment. But no, I mean, the early memories were fantastic, they really were. We won in leagues and cups. Rangers were never a threat, because as I say, I started going in 1978, so between then and 87 they never won a league, won 2 or 3 cups, and were finishing 4th and 5th every season. So that wasn't the big thing for us. It was Aberdeen, and it was challenging them and Dundee United and stuff like that. So my early memories of Celtic are all really good ones, really, really exciting ones.
Your second song?
Yeah, well, the reason I picked this song is because when I was growing up and got to about 14, 15, we were starting to realise in our area that there were very few opportunities and stuff like that. That kind of young angry man thing was starting to look towards politics, starting to look towards Irish politics, starting to look towards all this kind of thing about how you can change things and how you never really had a voice to do that and stuff. And then one of my mates came in one day and he said, look at this record I've got, and I was like, alright, I never heard it. And he's like, look what the sticker says, and that sticker had on it the parental advisory lyrics. What does that mean, and he's like, it means they're swearing at it. Alright, well, stick it on then. And he sticks this album on, this song comes on, and I was just blown away by it. I was blown away by the passion of it, about the kind of couldn't give a toss attitude about it. And I remain a huge fan of these people right now, and it's a song I probably listen to once or twice a week to this day. So it's one of the ones where I just think, if you ever need inspired, this will do it.
That was straight out of Compton by NWA. What irritates you?
Probably apathy. I'm one of these people who can never really keep my mouth shut when I see injustice or something I didn't agree with or stuff like that. And I used to spend a lot of my life sort of saying to people, surely you can see this, and surely you want to do something about it, get up there and do something, whatever, and kind of realised after a long time that kind of style of trying to get people to do stuff, and it's something doesn't really work, that they've got to kind of mentally choose it themselves kind of thing. But I can't stand it when people and people might think this is based on personal experience, people criticise people for getting out there and doing something, I think in this country there's a level of cynicism that gets attached to everything. I get inspired by kind of people who actually go out and say, here's what I am and here's what I do and stuff like that. And there's nothing worse than people just being completely apathetic to it when people are putting their heart and soul into things. So that really does infuriate me. And ignorance really infuriates me. I'd love to have thought that by now at the age of almost 39 that, some of this stuff like racism and sectarianism and that would be things that we talked about in the annals of history, but unfortunately they still go on day in, day out. And the other thing that really irritates me is privilege. I find it absolutely incredible that in 2013 we still live in a society that we pay a family to be that family, and that old Etonians still run our government and didn't represent anybody that I know, or and see politicians, and I think, I watched Question Time and I just thought, I'm going to need beta blockers soon, because I think that what happens in this country is that we have political arguments that are designed to shift the argument to the right, so that even if they lose the argument's all about right-wing stuff. And I think Scotland is a pretty much left-wing country, and I challenged on that last week, and I'll say is, just look at the way they vote. The reason why we are on the cusp of an independence referendum is because in 2011 people of this country rejected the Tory government and said to the SNP, there is your mandate for this independence. That probably shocked the SNP, but that wasn't a vote for the SNP, that was a vote against the Tory government. And therefore I think that what can happen in this country and how we can make it better is that people have to understand that this independence referendum is not about voting for the SNP. To be quite honest, whisper it, the real goal of independence is to get rid of the Tories and the SNP. But that happens after we win the vote, and we drift back to the left, because you can be damn sure that the stuff that's going on from the SNP right now in terms of our support and the horrific way that they're being treated will not happen in independent Scotland, because we'll have the power to vote them out. And we'll also have the power to put people into office who are actually representing us, which is not going to happen in Britain right now, but it will happen in an independent Scotland. And that's, to me, is what an independent Scotland should be about. It's not about whether it should be independent or not. It's about what kind of independent Scotland will it be. Will we look after our poor or disabled or elderly? Will there be social justice for people? Will there be social mobility for people? Will people have jobs, houses? Will we be able to define who we are, what we are, and how we look at things? And hopefully, my goal in that would be an independent socialist republic that can be built on the ideals of the people of Scotland. So apathy and ignorance ties into that, because I think people are still a bit apathetic and are still a bit ignorant to how important this actually is, and that there will never be a better chance that if you didn't like what Scotland's like right now, you can change it. Now, people might disagree with that and say, no, we need to start your or that kind of thing. But the outset of that for me also is I've always been somebody who tried anything I could to break the union up, primarily to get a united Ireland. And I think that as a consequence of Scotland voting yes in September 14, a united Ireland could well be upon us pretty long after, and it would be kind of highly ironic and somewhat satisfying if that came in 2016, the 100 years after the men put their lives on the line, to inspire the future generations to grab it. So, as I say, anybody who gets up and if didn't criticise them, think about what they've got to say, and that's the kind of stuff that I like, and I hate people just being ignorant and apathetic towards it without actually thinking about what they're actually saying.
And your third song, Paul?
Yeah, well, this kind of relates to about 1990 in my life, when I was starting to grow up a bit. I didn't mean mentally, I was still immature, but 16, 17, women appear on the horizon, pubs appear on the horizon, drugs appear on the horizon. There was a gang of us that used to go around my area and stuff, and our kind of thing was that maybe 5 or 6 of us, and we never had any money or stuff like that, but you could maybe scrape together a £5, and that £5 would go towards a wee bit of hash. And out we would go, we were in the middle of the summer and roll joints, and kind of my mate used to roll the joints, and then I'd work out that you want to be sitting next to him because he's going to pass you the first one, so then he'd end up front loading the joint and stuff like that, just all the wee tricks and that kind of thing. And my mate says, you need to wear a badge now all the time. I said, what are you talking about? He says, you have to wear a badge, and people couldn't understand how our gang always wore badges, Celtic badges or James Connolly badges and things like that, Hibs badges, whoever was there. And that was because when the hash got so tiny that you burn yourself. When you burnt it, you put it on the end of the pin of the badge and could just burn it like that, and just all the wee tricks and stuff. And then along came a band who we just looked at and went, that's us, they are just us, but they're up there singing. That was a huge moment in my life, and I remain a fan of this band to this day, and the attitude is what I love about them. They were living the rock and roll lifestyle before they were actually rock and roll stars, and we just identified with that so much. And I think this song is one of their very, very best, and it's very underrated, but every time I hear it, it makes me feel good and makes me think back to that summer where we were all just young and innocent and had the whole thing ahead of us,
And this song is?
It's Dennis and Lois by Happy Mondays.
Right, Paul, how do you relax?
With great difficulty. I'm kind of like not one of these people who can sit about for long periods of time or anything like that, or lie in my bed or anything, once I'm awake I'm up and stuff like that, and always thinking about stuff, in the future and how I can do stuff, whatever. But also the world we live in, as we've mentioned, it's kind of like when you hear stuff that just irritates you and you just think, no, I've got to say something about that kind of thing. I like going to pubs, I like socialising with my mates and stuff. I like walking. I feel that I can get a lot of my best ideas when I can get out and walk for 5 or 10 miles, and maybe get to about 3 miles and then my head will start to clear a wee bit and good stuff can go on instead of all the kind of crap that goes through our heads every day and stuff like that. I love watching films. I'm a huge kind of film buff. Watch most of the new stuff that comes out, and watch the same films over and over again quite a lot. Love reading books, and I kind of really love reading and watching about people who create stuff and how they created it, the classic stuff, whether it's classic albums or whatever, and what thinking went in it, so that I can kind of try and take anything for that and say, oh, that's a good idea, like how they thought about it and stuff, because I loved the fact I heard the story about the Beatles, where it was kind of like one of the big reasons their music changed for the kind of pop style into the kind of Sgt. Pepper style and stuff like that, and the albums that came out of that was that they moved out of central London and into the suburbs and were getting picked up in limousines, and McCartney was still staying in St John's Wood, which is just in the corner from Abbey Road Studios, so he'd be there first, and then Ringo would get picked up and John would get picked up and George Harrison would get picked up, and by the time they got to the studio they were all wasted, the reefers were gone, everything was gone in the limo. Out of that came Sgt. Pepper's, but then they were like, oh, you can't put this out as the Beatles, so then Paul says, well, we can call ourselves a different name, and that becomes Sgt. Pepper's. And I always loved that, because my father, God rest him, said that Sgt. Pepper's came out 2 weeks after we won the European Cup, but obviously on the radio it had been played before that, and my old man heard that song on the Monday, the day before he was going to Lisbon for the Thursday, and he said, as soon as I heard that song I knew we were going to win the cup. And so every time, and it's that building of momentum at the start of that song, I just think is fantastic and it's inspiring. I seen a documentary about Elvis, and the guy was talking to one of the Jordanaires about what they had done. That was Elvis's backing group. He said, he stood there and he was kind of like, just thinking the whole time, you've changed the world, And I had that exact same experience when I met Stevie Chalmers, right, where I was on a plane coming back to Derry and he was on it and he was sitting next to me and we were talking about he stays in Prestwick, and he's talking about what Prestwick Airport used to be like, and he used to have a bridge over the runway, let the cars out and stuff, and I just sat there for the whole journey thinking, you changed the world, you scored that goal, and it just, that was the birth of the modern Celtic, what I mean. And I love telling stories about Celtic, which obviously with the books and stuff, but I love sitting in pubs telling stories about them. I was in a pub yesterday half pissed and saying about, we've never got a better team than Lisbon Lions, and guys, Barcelona, when the AC Milan team, I says, listen, Lisbon Lions, 200 goals in one season, 42 attempts on target in a European Cup final. I said, if Barcelona get half that this year, then you can come and talk to me about it, you know what I mean? So that's how I relax, is I find myself just getting a bit nostalgic and a few drinks, and I love nothing more than just talking about how great Celtic are.
That sounds good. So I take it your next song's either going to be the Beatles, Elvis or Stevie Chalmers?
Well, it's none of them. The next song is a bittersweet song for me, because I used to play this song in my local pub, The Gunner, and The Gunner is a pub that's in Trainspotting, where it's the first day of the Edinburgh Festival, and the American guy goes in and ends up getting robbed for his jacket and stuff. And I used to go in there throughout the 90s and try and hold my head high as our club was kind of sinking, and this was a song that I used to play, and it became a song that people would slag me about because of the title and the fact that they would say that that's what you need and all this kind of thing, and stuff like that. And then what actually happened was I was kind of getting sick of it, and then I actually probably had my first real love. We kind of seduced each other over a manky pub table. Unfortunately it wasn't any Faye Dunaway stuff or anything like that, and I was kind of getting a feeling when I first met her that she had these great eyes, and I was kind of being drawn to them, and I sort of realised this is the first kind of adult, about 16, 17 adult kind of relationship I'm moving into. It was just one of these things where it just came on the jukebox at that point, and we kissed whilst that song was coming on, and so every time I hear that song I think about her, and it made me think that all the slaggings I got about this song, that it all worked out well in the end. And I would suggest to people slagging me about this song probably need the title a lot more than I do these days.
That was Give Me Shelter by the Rolling Stones. I was reading your book, By Any Means Necessary. A lot of it is written about America. What took you to America?
Basically, getting to the age of 30 and having done sod all decent with my life. I came out of a kind of long-term relationship and had moved house and stuff, and wasn't really going anywhere or doing anything, and was kind of pretty depressed and stuff like that, and had a big sort of depression come over my life right after Seville, and not just because we lost, but it was that summer I just started to feel a bit like, I didn't feel great, and I'd been to all the games at Seville, home and away and stuff like that, and the doctor says it's probably just because you've been so dialed into this whole thing, and then suddenly it's all finished, it's probably just washed over you a wee bit. But I didn't feel myself in that, and I started to kind of analyse my life a wee bit then, and realised, how much a kind of hothead I'd probably be coming across, and a bit of a prick at times, and I was piling on weight and all that kind of thing, and I was just like, I need to change myself. Then the doctor said, basically, when we get to about August 05, he was like, I need to speak to you, blah blah blah, come in, and he was like, basically, you need to change your life. You're smoking too much, you're drinking too much, you're far too overweight, and if you continue like this, I'll give you another 5 years. 5 years for what? And he's like, of your life. I'm like, holy shit. So, right, okay, stopped the drinking, stopped the smoking, then lost like 6 stone within a year. And in the midst of this, I had been gone over to New York because I had a couple of great friends there and stuff like that. I'd went over there in June 2006 when I kind of got an A1 health rating, whatever, and back on the drink and stuff after a year, and just had an absolutely phenomenal time. Felt like a new lease of life and stuff. My best friend over there, a guy called Gary, had said to me, have you never thought about moving over here full time? I'd been over about 10 times in 2 years at that point. I'd never ever even thought about that at all, and as soon as he said it, it just sounded right. So I thought, alright, okay, so let's have a think about this. So I thought about it all over the summer, and I thought, that's what I'm going to do, So I booked to go, I put most of my stuff in storage, gave up my house, saved up money, and went over. I flew over there, and for full time, 2 days after we beat Man United when Nakamura scored. That was my last game then, so it was brilliant. It was like a launch pad, right, here we go. And I flew over there, and he was picking me up on the corner of 42nd Street and Lexington Avenue, and it was actually Thanksgiving that day, and I wasn't aware of that because there was nobody about, and I'm thinking, what is going on here? And I'm standing there, 5-10 minutes passes and they sign him, and I just what the hell am I doing? I've just gave up my whole life, which to be fair wasn't much, to be honest, and I'm standing here in a foreign country waiting to get picked up by a guy who I've met maybe 6 or 7 times before, who's going to put me up until I hopefully get a house and job and stuff like that. And the kind of real panic went over me, like what if he doesn't turn up? And all that kind of thing. I only had a single ticket. But then as it transpired, he'd been sitting at a different corner and I was in the wrong place, which is kind of the story of my life, really, blaming him, I've got a curse on him and all that, and it's me that's in the wrong place, you know what I mean? So we went to his in-laws for Thanksgiving, and Gary being Gary, he's never told anybody that I'm coming. So they come in, if, like somebody would to a family party in your house, and this is Paul, and you're like, who? And he's like, have a seat, because he's kind of all out there, have a seat, have something to eat, and they're all like, who the hell is this coming to sit at our table on Thanksgiving? But they put me up, he stayed in New Jersey at the time, and so that kind of feeling, the Thursday and the Friday was a bit like, am I doing the right thing here, or, all the kind of doubts and paranoia goes through your mind and all that kind of thing. And then what happened was we went out on the Saturday. I ended up, getting a woman, and as I walked out that night, the pub, and I was kind of bedazzled by the fact that here I am the first night, and I've, got a bird, type thing. This was on 53rd between 6th and 7th, and I come out a bar called the Old Castle, facing a bar called Faces and Names, and there's a woman coming towards me, tall, black, stunning. I mean, just like, out of this world, supermodel stunning. And I was just like, holy shit, and like, never seen a woman like this before in my life. And as she stepped to the side, because a car went past, the guy behind her came into focus, and it was David Bowie. And that was his wife, a man. And he kind of shook his hand, and was just like, I can't believe this, it's David Bowie standing there, and he was totally nice, alright mate, and all that kind of thing. And we get in a cab, and the girl was like, who was that? And I was like, that was David Bowie, and she just went, alright, and never said a word about it. And I was like, what? Ended up at her house in Astoria, Queens, get up in the morning, was kind of different in the morning. She was a bit frostier. I don't know why. I don't know what I'd done. I don't want to get too graphic, but she had to show me the subway because I never had a clue where I was, and that was a kind of frosty walk, let me tell you. So I get in, Gary's there, and he's wanting to find out all the details and stuff, and I'm like, well, forget that. I met David Bowie, and he was just like, what? And he was a huge Bowie fan, and he was just like, I can't believe this. Like, I've been living in this city 30 odd years, and you've just came here 2 nights, and you meet David Bowie. So we ended up going drinking. He's like, let's go drinking that. So we ended up talking and telling all the stories about the night before and stuff like that. And there was a girl in the bar who was kind of lugging in, so we were kind of amplifying it and exaggerating it more just for a laugh and stuff. And she's getting drawn and that kind of thing. So by the end of the night, we were absolutely steaming. And Gary's one of these guys, like he's how can I put it nicely? He doesn't ask you things. He kind of commands things, So he's like, I'm bringing the car round in 5 minutes. Be outside, right? And I'm like, well, do you want a lift home to this girl? And she's like, cool, and so she stayed in Spanish Harlem, which is about 10-15 minutes for the bar, in the bar called Connolly's, and we get there, and it's kind of like, that sort of thing where I'm thinking, should I make a move or no, and all that sort of thing, because then I started to think, well, she must be overheated going in the car with 2 strangers and that. And we get to this block, and it's like really good and stuff and all that kind of thing, and she was like, do you want to escort me to my apartment? I was like, all right. And Gary's like, 20 minutes like this, and I'm like, for Christ's sake, so we go up the stair, and she's like, oh, do you want to go on the roof? I thought, what the So we get up on the roof, and I just remember walking out on the roof, and like I just saw this Manhattan skyline in front of me, and it's at night, it's pitch black, all the lights, and I was just blown away. And I was just like, you know what, I've made the right decision, like there's no doubt about it, this is it. And then she then, let's just say she confirmed then that I'd made the right decision after that. And so we cleaned up and left and went back down the stair, and I was so over the moon and top of the world at that point. And then it was kind of like I just realised that I was actually dying on a piss. And so I'm in the elevator, and I'm like, oh no, I'm coming for the roof, and I couldn't have had it in, and just had to piss in the elevator. And pristine gold plated elevator and stuff like that. And I get out, and Gary's there, and he's like, oh, how'd you get on? I said, it was great and all that kind of thing. I said, I feel really good. I feel, like I made the right choice. And he was like, fantastic. And then what happened was, as we drove away, he puts the radio on, and this song comes on, and it was like the song was talking to me. It was about a guy as a stranger going to New York for the first time and being a bit like, this is too intimidating, and then suddenly something happens and it changes his life. And that's why I love the song, and I would always pick it in any situation like this.
That was Hot in the City by Billy Idol. Can you ever see yourself going back to stay in America at any point?
Probably no. I kind of hit the ground running when I first went there, and in the past I was always a bit abrasive and sometimes could be a bit of a prick and hot-headed and stuff like that, because I always said my piece, and some people just didn't like that. And then what happened in New York was that Gary being one of these guys, and then introduced me to his friends, and they were all kind of like that. They were all kind of like anything goes basically, and you say what you want, and nobody took any offence by it. And I just thought, God, I finally met guys that are like me, who just say anything and all that kind of thing, and just had some unbelievable times, and they're going out drinking and going to all these great bars and nightclubs and restaurants and diners and all that kind of thing. And I ended up getting an apartment in a place called Forest Hills, which is a big Jewish community, which was a culture shock for me, because I don't think I'd honestly met a Jewish person before I'd went over there. So all of a sudden Saturday becomes the day of rest, and where I was actually living was where Goodfellas was kind of filmed. And it was amazing to me when I saw the location of it, because the location's probably at best about 150 yards long, yet in the movie it looks like it's in 10 different locations, and it's all just round the corner and all that kind of thing. And so me being just sort of blown away by New York and a bit wide-eyed and stuff, I'm with all these guys one night and sort of saying about, God, I was looking at locations for Goodfellas in Salerno, where they does, Joe Pesci does his funny how kind of thing and all that sort of thing. And I was like, what a life these guys must have led. And suddenly silence goes above them, and it's kind of like, what have I said here? And then it took me about 15-20 seconds for the penny to drop to think, these guys are living the same life. So that's when everything started to fall into place. Everything was done to excess by them, and nothing was ever a problem. If you needed tickets for an event, they were provided. Money was always there if you ever needed it. Contacts were there. Everybody knew them. Every bar you went into welcomed them like a returning king. And you're just getting caught up in this as a big Scottish guy over there, kind of like this is just too good to be true, because at the time I was pretty low in confidence and pretty low self-esteem. To then go into this situation where everywhere you went you were treated like a king, it's like, this is just a dream come true. I couldn't have asked for any better than this. And then you kind of realise that the reason that this is happening is because these people are part of an organisation that kind of commands respect. Neighbourhood guys, as we would call them over there and stuff. But not just with guys like that, and other guys I would met, very good friend of mine over there, Big Frankie Fraser, same age as me, kind of father from Glasgow. He's born and bred in Queens and Woodside, and he was another guy who was just like a huge influence. Like, what I would say, I mentioned it in one of the books about Frankie, was that when you go somewhere new, particularly to start a new life, you need a guy like Frankie. He just shows you the rules and he tells you what this is all about, and you go in and you forget the tourist guide books, this is what you really do, that kind of thing. And especially in a place like New York, because a lot of people just can't handle it. Right. It's so big and it's so overpowering and all that kind of thing. For that 2-year period initially, the life of excess that I led, with everything going, is exemplified in this kind of song that's coming up, because this was just, this really, when I hear this song, it really amplifies just what it was like to live that life the first 2 years.
That was Anything Goes by AC/DC. Right, you were living the good life by the sounds of it. Could it last forever?
Well, at the time I thought it would, but I never. People will know I've read the book. June the 17th, 2008, I got a call from a girl to go and meet her outside a diner to go for lunch, and it was nothing out of the ordinary or anything like that. And so what happens is I go, the diner was maybe 5 minutes from my house or whatever, and as I'm on my way, she calls me and says, I'm going to be like 20 minutes late. I must admit, at the time I thought it was strange, because I thought she'd be coming for the subway, and how the hell would she be able to get a signal down there? So I walk there, it's a beautiful day, I'm standing at the subway, I see a girl that I don't know coming up the subway. She's wearing a long kind of Hillary Clinton type white pantsuit, looks absolutely stunning on her tan skin. And at the time the thoughts running through my mind, oh God, she looks good. I heard somebody saying my name, and I knew instinctively they were talking to me. And as I turned round, there was a guy with a gun in my face, and I kind of became aware of the situation, that there was 3 of them, and then there was a female cop maybe 10 yards behind them, and these were FBI guys, and it was kind of like, get on your knees, lock your fingers behind your head, all that sort of stuff. I was just like, what the, So they done that, they put the handcuffs on and stuff, and marched me to a waiting car, an unmarked waiting car. And this was on Queens Boulevard, which effectively is like a long stretchy road that takes you straight into Manhattan, but it's about 6 miles from Manhattan where we are. The guy goes on the radio and he says, coming in with a body for Queens. So I'm thinking, what's he mean, body? No experience of kind of law enforcement at all in America, so I was kind of completely oblivious to what was going on. They never said a word to me in the car, and then halfway through the journey, one of the guys is like, are you hungry, to the other guy, and he's like, oh yeah, and they stop at this fast food place called White Castle and look me in the car and go and eat. And I'm kind of like sitting there, my hands behind my back, and every time I move my hands the handcuffs are digging in harder and harder, which my cousin's a cop in California, and he told me, he said, there's a button you can press to no make that happen or make that happen. But he said the way you were arrested suggests that they thought you were going to be a threat, because it turned out that these 3 guys were FBI guys who had been brought in specifically to arrest me, and the arresting officer was a woman who was Detective Diaz, her name was. By that point, paranoia was running through my mind. I was like, what is going on here? I mean, do I even know these are cops or anything, and it's every, thousands of thoughts, and you're looking out and just seeing people going about their everyday life. It's the middle, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're thinking, God, what I'd give to be you right now, whoever you are. When they come back, still didn't say a word, take me to the 33rd precinct in Manhattan and put me in the hands of Detective Diaz. Again, still doesn't say a word. Takes me down for fingerprints, photographs, etc. It puts me in a room, takes the handcuffs off at last. My arms, my wrists were shot to pieces, and I'm thinking, thank God for that. And then 2 minutes later she goes, we need to chain you to the radiator. Still to this point, no idea what's going on, whatever, because I'm thinking, I've seen Law and Order, you read your rights and all that, you know what I mean, the right to remain silent and all that kind of, nothing like that. So she comes in, and then she's like, do you know why you're here? Now this time I'd been sitting there 45 minutes, and it was absolutely boiling in this in a holding cell thing, and I was really pissed off by this point, and so I was like, do you know why you're here? I said, you brought me here. And she was like, yeah, keep talking funny, man, you know what I mean? And she lays out the litany of charges, and it was things, like racketeering, menacing, second degree assault, illegal gambling. What? At that point you are thinking, this is like Candid Camera, somebody's got to jump out and go, gotcha, But then that feeling gets replaced by, no, this is real. And this is getting serious, So she was like, do you want to just make a statement now and we'll get this cleared up? And I went, no, because I've not got a lawyer or anything like that. That pissed her off. And then she came back after 10 minutes. She'd been conflabbing with this guy, and she came back and she goes, you can make your life a hell of a lot easier if you talk about him, and put 3 names on the table. I looked at them, I didn't even know one of them. One I had met once, and one was a good friend of mine. So I'm thinking, what on earth does she think I am, or whatever? And I was like, I'm not saying anything about anybody. No, that wasn't a conscious, I'm a hard man, I'm not talking type thing. That was, I really didn't have anything to say about these people, apart from one of them, but I'm not going to reveal that or anything. That decision probably helped me in the long run, let's say. So that was it. So it was like, okay, she puts me back in the cell and she says, we're going to take you to a place called the Tombs. That just sounded death to me, That happened to be the Manhattan Detention Complex, which is where they take people before they take them to Rikers Island. You kind of bed them for the night. At which point, unbeknown to me, one of my friends has heard about the arrest, don't know how, had went down to the police station and was like, you've got the wrong guy here, blah blah blah. And I'd noticed in the midst of all this that Detective Diaz, her attitude had changed a wee bit towards me. It had softened, and I realised now it was him going in there and went, you've made a huge mistake here, and that kind of put a wee bit doubt on her. And by the end of it, she takes me down to the Tombs, and she gets a guy to drive who's absolute doubly Lou Costello, by the way, and that's all I could think of when I was in the car. And he's typical moaning and groaning, and she took me to the Tombs. She checked me in. It's like, surrounded by every kind of person you could imagine, junkies and gangsters, and there was Latino guys and Chinese, and it was just like this myriad all around you. And the last thing she said to me was good luck, and I was like, aye, thanks, and into a holding cell with 25 other guys, and I was the only white guy in it. No bones about it. I was shitting myself, you know what I mean, because I was just like, what's going on? And so what helped me in the holding cell and subsequently in Rikers Island was the fact that I came from Scotland, because they looked at me and thought, oh, big white skinhead, he'll not last the night. And then I opened my mouth and they were like, what planet do you come from, And people could not believe, black guys from Harlem and stuff, they could not believe that a guy from Scotland had came to America. Like, how did you get here? Like, a plane, it was like coming from Mars as far as they were concerned, So that was that. So I ended up going to Rikers Island. Not a place I'd recommend for a holiday, I must admit. Although I have to say I've stayed in worse hotels and been checked in quicker in Rikers Island, a little place. But it's a horrible journey. You own this thing called the Grey Goose, which is the bus, and it's like a bus that, I think it was an extra on the Shawshank Redemption, and you kind of go over a road that takes you to an island, obviously. It's just Rikers Island, and that's at the point when it starts to hit you like, oh Jesus Christ, and this imposing building's coming towards you. So I ended up staying in there for 31 days whilst people were doing all this kind of thing that was kind of going on, because at first I got what they call a public defender, which is a lawyer that you didn't pay for, and he was absolutely hopeless. I thought he was going to come in and assure me that everything's going to be alright, and he was like, the first thing he said to me was, this is going to be tough. I'm like, what? I've not done anything wrong, And he was absolutely hopeless, and he made that guy and my cousin Vinny look like fucking Petricelli, you know what I mean? So these guys that I was talking about earlier that had been connected and stuff, they were on the case and got me this phenomenal lawyer called Don Murray. He came to Rikers Island visiting, and he was the first guy, because at that point I've been living in a perpetual state of fear, just 24/7, and I'm thinking to myself, for these kind of chat, I could be standing in an orange jumpsuit till I'm 90, So then he was coming in and he was like, listen, this case is a bullshit case, blah 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 blah, we'll get it sorted, don't worry about it. And he tried to get me out on the Vienna Statute. And the Vienna Statute was something that was signed after the Second World War, which is if you get arrested in a foreign country, they have to alert the embassy, and they never done that. The British Embassy in America. And I'm like, oh yes. And he's like, yeah, but your charges are too serious, so they didn't need to. I'm like, oh cheers, And the actual jail itself, it was all right. I mean, I never ever else over any scenes in the showers. Never seen anything like that. Never seen any really hassle and that kind of thing. Certainly a hell of a lot of scary people and stuff. There were habits that I picked up in there that I still have to this day. One of them's eating quickly. If you go to a restaurant, you're like eating quickly, and that's because a guy told me that he said you're eating far too slow. I don't know, what do you mean? And he was like, you could get a lockdown here any time. You could be in 48 hours lockdown. And so you get eating quick, because this is the place that happens, the most trouble happens in. I became a better basketball player, which I felt I had to, because at first I was a wee bit like Woody Harrelson and White Men Can't Jump. They're like, who the fuck's this white guy, And all these big black dudes are all like, dunking people and stuff. But as it went on and Don Murray was coming and showing me, things were starting to happen. And of course, what you're thinking at the time is how many people you've let down, your family and all that kind of thing. And you're just like, because you feel like you're in the pits of hell and you're so far away from ever seeing seen them again, you know. But to cut a long story short, two things inspired me there. One was that I'd realised after 15 days I seen a guy that I knew, and he was in Rikers Island, and I was like, holy shit, that this was part of this huge arrest, this huge sweep of people. And he was walking past a fence in a kind of, you know, in a line with everybody handcuffed and foot cuffed, and the COs were like in between them. That's the correctional officers, the screws. They were one by one in between them, and these were dangerous people. And people kind of looked at them and were all like, oh, didn't make eye contact. And the next minute I just heard, hey, Paul. And I went, what? And they'd seen this guy. And he's like, hey, man, don't worry about it. He says, we'll be living like Elvis once again, right? And it's the phrase that always stuck in my mind, living like Elvis, you know? For what a great way to live, you know? Then Don Murray was like, we're going to get you out of here, you know? And you might think you're going to go to trial on the 18th of August. This is now kind of early July. I've missed the entire European Championships, 2008. Never seen it, probably never seen it to this day. He says, you know, you might think that's bad because you're having to wait so long because you're going to have to be under house arrest and wear a tag and all that, but it's good because I can effectively chip away at this trial and the charges, and by the time we get to August 18th I expect to be standing there making you a free man. So I thought, great, eventually go out and stuff, but that was the problems that started at the beginning, because it was clear then that I was a marked man. Loads of shit was happening, you know. Suddenly I was getting people that I'd been sending stuff back to, like, you know, for presents and stuff, were getting hit with customs forms for hundreds of pounds and bills and stuff like that. Detectives were coming to the house in New Jersey that we're staying in, just, you know, harassing us basically. New charges were being trumped up to the point where 4 days after I'd got out, that I'd went round to a house and tried to throw a guy off a balcony 6 floors up. The family I was staying with knew I'd never left the house. Right. So at that point they were just like, what is going on here? Like, this is, am I going crazy? I mean, this can't be possible, you know, and all that kind of. But and that's the whole thing about it, is that I didn't want to keep dragging it out, but it's more like, it's when is this going to end so I can start fighting back, you know? Mm-hmm. If it's more stuff, it's hard to start fighting back. So eventually, you know, and then it was like, oh, now we're going to deport you as well. And I'm like, fine, let's go. I'll happily go. But no, but you're going to have to pay for it. And you're going to, oh Christ. So anyway, long story short, eventually then the police stole my passport and pretended they never had it, and I never got that back. So I had to go to the British Embassy and say I need a passport, and they're like, well, when are you travelling? Well, I've not got any travel details. Well, you need travel details. And I was like, oh shit, here we go, another red tape American thing. The woman's like, no, go and book a flight, act like you've never came in here before, and then I'll give you a passport. And I honestly could have kissed her when she said that. I thought, oh my God, somebody who actually talks English and can, you know, actually straight English, you know what I mean? So I done that, and I was given the money for my fare by a couple of the guys, and I managed to get out. But that kind of led to a hell of a lot of problems to me. You know, I was a marked man in Scotland for a while. I was getting visits with police and all this kind of thing, and then encountered post-traumatic stress disorder with the consequence of being in the jail and stuff that I kind of had to fight against for 2 years. And after that 2 years I realised that, you know, the only way to do that was to go back and exercise the demons, which I did. But the point was, and why I picked this song, is that there was a point for 2 days where my whole life just went completely away from me. My credit cards got stopped, all my stuff got stolen from me by the FBI, my bank accounts got raided, my work got informed that I would no longer be there, I was no longer allowed to go to my house or the borough of Queens. And this song exemplifies exactly how I was feeling at the time, when I felt like everything was just falling apart around me.
Friends by Led Zeppelin. Right, we've come to the part of the programme where I give you the complete works of the dandy and a copy of the Bible to take with you to your island. Mm-hmm. Would you like a copy of the Bible?
I probably would. The first time I ever read the Bible full was actually in jail, and you know, I'll give it a better review than I thought I would have. I think it was kind of brainwashed a bit with it. When you're really young, and you kind of think, oh God, you know, just I've had enough of this kind of thing. But you know, I've no idea if it's true or no. But there's a lot of life lessons in there that are actually, they didn't get the credit for it, you know. So yeah, and the fact that it's huge would certainly be a good accompaniment on a desert island.
Which other book would you take, and why?
I'd love to sit here and sound like Melvin Bragg and say, you know, Ulysses by James Joyce or something, but I've tried to read that about 8 times and I just can't get to the end of it at all. It would probably be something like For It's a Grand Old Team to Play For by Ronnie Simpson, simply because in that book Ronnie completely gets over the fact that here he was a kind of journeyman football player that got a chance to play for the best team in the world and the greatest club in the world, and the passion and the commitment that he, you know, exudes in that book is something that really, really inspires me. He stayed in Edinburgh late in his life and stuff, and I met him a couple of times. He's such a humble, nice guy, but the fact remains that this was a goalkeeper who'd done a back heel in the European Cup final. So For It's a Grand Old Team to Play For by Ronnie Simpson would remind me constantly why I support this great club.
A luxury Something to take with you to make your life a bit more bearable. Can't be a human being and can't be a phone.
I'd probably need a hat because I've got sensitive skin, and on a desert island my heat would burn big time, as it has done plenty of times in the past. Not that I've been on any desert islands apart from this one, but certainly a hat is something that it's kind of become a bit of a caricature of me always wearing a hat, and it's primarily for to keep sun off my head or keep warm, basically, like, you know. But aye, a hat would be it.
This will be your last song on your island. Is there a wee story that goes with it?
You know, coming from Edinburgh as a Celtic supporter, you're often get accused of being a glory hunter and all that kind of thing, and I would, you know, it's nonsense certainly for me, because I never had a choice. I was, you know, my father was a Celtic supporter, his father was a Celtic supporter, all my family were, so it was never going to be like I would have the option of supporting Hibs or Hearts. I would have been homeless if I'd even attempted that. So the glory hunter thing, you know, as a Celtic supporter, you know, you go through the highs and lows. It's a roller coaster, you know, and we never do anything easy and stuff, but Celtic has given me so much greatness in my life and so many great experiences and all that kind of thing that it's kind of worth it, all the stick you take. I'm kind of proud to have basically went to every game Celtic played when Rangers Old Code done their 9 in a row and never flew the nest like a few people could have done at the time or whatever. But the other thing about it, and expressed in this song, is the euphoria that Celtic give you, and it's expressed in this song, this feeling of just being on a day like the day where you win another league championship. It kind of reminds you why you follow this great club, and these great people that follow it. People that I'm attracted to mostly on this planet are people who have got Celtic coursing through their veins, and you've got that passion and the kind of desires and the commitment that come out of them and stuff. So this kind of song is a tribute to the people who, you know, might have called me a glory hunter in the past, and it's also a tribute to all the guys who stuck with Celtic through thick and thin, and I hope each and every one of them are enjoying the riches that they're now providing.
Paul Larkin, thank you very much for being a Desert Island Tim.
Pleasure.